Hello, hello. How's it going? Nice to see we've got a lot of people today. I think we might even fill out all of our places. So good news. Who've we got? Let's see. Say hi if you can see me, if you can hear me well. I can recognize quite a few names already. Christian, how's it going? Dan, Daniele, Frederick. Good. Know quite a few of the names. Great to see. Who else have we got? Nick. How's things? We need to catch up soon. I'm back in the UK. Pasquale as well. Good afternoon. Tui, good to see you as well. And Yuri, another one we know. Excellent. How's everyone doing? Friday afternoon for most of you, nearly the weekend, and good time to start thinking about your long-term career. Get out a little bit of that sort of day-to-day of meetings and your day-to-day work. Good, Nick. Yeah, we will catch up. We're going to be organising our Product Mid London meetup in 2 months or so. So we'll catch up then. Christian, good. Nice to see. Hi. How's it going, everyone else? Good to see some new names. Annie, hi. Yuri, other Yuri. Angelina. Sorry. Vinay, nice to meet you. Kashmira, hi. How's it going? Ipak, Syed, nice to meet you all as well. Daniel as well, another name I recognize. Good to see you. Lucas, got you as well. Yeah, we've got a lot of people. As I said, we might actually fill out our spaces. That's whoever joins late, that's the problem, unfortunately. So let's jump in today. I'm just going to share my screen. If somebody could just double check, just comment and confirm that you can see the presentation on the comments, then that'd be great. And then we're going to jump straight in. Eric as well. Nice to see you. Good. Excellent. Thanks for that, guys. Perfect. Let's jump in. So what's the format today? It's going to be about 35 minutes presentation. It's going to be pretty quick fire. It's going to be actionable, everything that we're going to cover. And then we're going to have 10-15 minutes of Q&A. So I'm going to give you 15 minutes extra of your lives back, which would be nice. So anyone wants to stay longer for Q&A, we'll just keep that rolling until the hour, essentially. But it'll be about 35 minutes of really actionable content. You will also see somewhere on your screen that there are handouts. On that, you're going to find the presentation slides, and you're going to find a document called Useful Links. Useful Links is everything I'm going to mention later on. Whenever I mention, that's in Useful Links. Where is it? It's in the Useful Links document. Surprise. Good. Carsten, it may be loading up if it's still connecting for you. Alfred, I'm not sure what you're trying to say there. 30% and the lady, not sure. But anyway, let's jump in. Good. Okay, so let's jump into the presentation. As I said, about 35 minutes, and then we're going to go into the Q&A for the rest of the session. Excellent. Any comments or questions, feel free to post those, but I'll come to them after the presentation itself. So feel free to get your questions down. We'll come on to those after. So we're all here today to learn how to negotiate a 30% higher salary and or a promotion. I want to start with a little competition, though. I want you to open up your calendars, create an event called Career Progress Review, and I want you to set the date for 4 weeks' time, 3 to 4 weeks' time. And I want you to invite your boss to that meeting. Second, I want you to actually email me a screenshot at henry@prod.mba. I want you to do it right now. I want you to do it right now, because if you don't do it right now, you're not going to do it. Right? We're going to learn all of this useful, actionable advice today on how to negotiate your salary effectively, but it's all a waste of time unless you put it into practice. So I want you to get that meeting booked in. If you do that, I'm going to send you a free copy of my book. We're going to pay for that. We're going to ship it to you. Pasquale, I know I still owe you a copy. I've been away the last few weeks. I'm now back in the office, and that is going to be sent over to you in Berlin. Everybody else that does this is going to get a free physical copy of my book. On that screenshot, I want to see the email of your boss. I'm not going to do anything with that. I just want to make sure it's the real deal, not only so that we're not cheated out of a good quality copy of the book, but also, again, it's all about you today. It's all about actually putting what we're going to teach you into practice. So get that done now if you want, or when we do one of the interactive exercises. What are we going to cover today? 3 key topics. So firstly, why you most likely fear negotiation. Secondly, why tactics aren't enough, right? And tactics can get you 5-10%, but not 30%. And finally, the key part of today, the practical hands-on side of things, understanding what we call the big domino, right? The one thing that really matters, that if we knock that domino down, everything else falls into place and we can push for 30% and a lot more than just the money. We'll come on to that later today. You're here to learn more about how to negotiate your salary, right? But what really is a salary negotiation? I want you to just post your answers. What is a salary negotiation? You should just post this on the chat. Excellent. Okay, good. Chris, yeah, a little bit too soon for you. I think you've only been at the job 2 weeks, so, but put it in maybe 3 months, for example. Gabe, a value exchange. Peter, coming to a mutual agreement on what my time and skills are worth. Good. Ekaterina, performance review. Yuri, persuading manager you're worth more than you got. Chris, discussing how much value you bring in and how it's rewarded by the company. Nick, negotiation experience and skills for monetary gain. Good. Interesting. Good. Excellent. Really interesting to see. Now, money, exclamation mark. Good. Okay, interesting. We're going to come on to that a little bit later. So before we jump in, just a quick introduction. I'm Henry Latham. Since my first startup failed back in 2012 and trying to understand, what happened, I've been obsessed with really trying to understand what makes some product leaders succeed and others fail. That journey led me to work in 5 different countries in a big variety of product and startup roles over the last 10 years, and really culminated in the publication of my book, Product Leadership Starts With You, and now running my own business. Now I share my experience as founder of Product MBA, where we fast track product managers and product owners to head of product by actually getting you to build a real product from zero to revenue and learn a hands-on product playbook in the process. It's relevant to mention like who I am and what my company does, purely because this is why I feel we're able to actually run this webinar. Through our work at Product MBA, with over 170 PMs now, we've learned really effectively what does and what does not work when it comes to increasing your salary. Here are some results here from an anonymous student: 55% salary increase and equity post Product MBA. Somebody else who's on the call today that I've anonymized, somebody who actually moved company, got out of a feature factory, came in with a higher salary and more importantly, a more purposeful product-led role. So just 2 of many examples. And add to that the fact that, personally, I've done over 450 sales calls using many of the negotiation tactics that I'll be sharing today with you as well. But before we talk about how to negotiate salary, I think it's really important to understand and just address many of the fears that prevent you actually negotiating or delaying a negotiation. First, it can be really uncomfortable. We can feel like a rabbit in the headlights. Is the other person going to get angry? Am I asking too much? Am I asking in the right way? But it doesn't need to be uncomfortable. If we actually prepare properly for this conversation, it can be a very easy, actually very comfortable conversation to have. Second, it can feel like backstabbing. Particularly in small companies, it can really feel like we're stabbing the company in the back. Maybe that your boss has hired and mentored you, or the founder has sunk his life's work and his savings in many cases into the business, or you're working at a struggling company who can't take on more costs or seems like they can't take on more costs. It can feel really bad, right? It feels like we're betraying our tribe at times, people who trust us. But again, it doesn't need to feel like this. I think 2 key points. Firstly, most companies would stab you in the back in the first opportunity. I don't mean that in a malicious way. It's just the reality of business. If your role becomes automated or just irrelevant, or you don't deliver results, they're going to fire you, and they should fire you. They can't keep on the massive costs. Every single person here particularly those in Europe and the US, like you cost your company not just your salary, but another 40%, even higher in places like Germany in terms of admin costs and taxes. So you're costing them, 100,000+ euros a year. It is unfeasible for them to keep you there unless you're creating value. So on the flip side, don't feel bad about protecting your own interest. Secondly, again, we can have this conversation in an open, honest way that can feel comfortable for us. It can feel like we're not stabbing our boss or our team in the back. We just need to approach it in an objective way, and we need to, again, come to that conversation prepared. 3, sometimes we feel we need to wait. We have an annual review for this kind of stuff, right? Our HR, our boss has carved out time, especially for this kind of stuff, once a year or once every quarter. So, how rude of me just to start, booking in meetings and asking for a salary increase. We feel like maybe it's best just to respect the company and maybe, wait my turn until next January to renegotiate. Finally, we think it's about the money. We think that we are driven purely by financial need when these conversations come up, or at least we worry that we're perceived to be driven by greed by other people in our team. And it's not a nice feeling to have. From speaking to over 1,000, literally 1,000 product managers over the last year, I can tell you maybe 10% get into product because of the salary, right? The higher salary. The other 90%, purpose, personal growth, having a positive impact on the world. Salary negotiation is therefore not about the money in most cases. It's about, and it should be about, something else entirely, something we're going to come on to discuss in the third and final section of today's webinar. Negotiation. One of the first times, so coming on to some specific tactics that can help, but are not quite enough to really have an impact. One of the first times I really thought about negotiation was when buying a house. I'd read, you probably heard of Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, a very good book, well worth reading. And I followed the tactics. And with just a few tweaks of an email, saved about 7 or 8% on the price of our first house, even in a very competitive market where there are other offers coming through. So it really sort of opened my eyes to tactics that seem simple, seem obvious, but really work. And you can use those in any situation. Buying secondhand furniture for your house, for example, is a fun way to try this out. So here are some of the tactics that you can apply. But before that, not so much a tactic, but I think just really important a reality to state at the moment that may be obvious, but worth stating. You as a product manager right now have massive leverage in these discussions. Literally last week, Amazon almost doubled their product salary cap from, I think it was around $200,000 to $350,000. So they're very strict and very tight on money over at Amazon, but even they have realized they have to adapt to the market. So, there's not enough supply of product people and there's very high demand. If you throw inflation into the mix, wages are just going up, particularly as you jump from PM to senior PM and obviously beyond that. So what tactics can we apply within a salary negotiation? Firstly, we can anchor high. If you want, say you're on 50K at the moment and you want to go for 70K, ask for 90. Because when you negotiate down to a lower number, it seems that you're being really reasonable from their perspective. It seems that you're meeting them in the middle. This tends to be where we feel is the sort of fair place. So again, anchor high. Practice this before you do your salary negotiation. Again, we're buying some secondhand furniture. Anchor super low, because when you then adjust, they say, no, that's unrealistic. You go, okay, well, why don't we increase a little bit? Then they think that's fair, and you meet more or less towards that low anchor if you're buying, or high anchor if you're selling your time in a negotiation. Secondly, argue for what is fair. Fairness, like with product marketing, is something that is a real powerful driver, a real powerful motivator. So when we negotiate, use the word fair just to bring in that sense of justice as well. We'll talk about how exactly in a second. Surprisingly effective. Secondly, use a very specific number. I'm sure you've heard this before, but it works. When you come in and say, I think a fair rate would be, let's say 82,500, 82,000. The other person assumes that you've really thought through that number, that you've arrived at an exact figure. So use a specific number, 82 rather than 80,000, for example. And I think finally, remember, they don't know these tactics. You're going to read something like never split the difference, or you're going to apply these three things. And you're going to assume it's so obvious when you use them in negotiation, but very few people bother to read these, or they simply don't recognize these tactics when they're applied. So don't feel that they're obvious, or you're being sort of stupid or just reading from the script when you use these. So here's the specific script that we can use. You can take a screenshot, or again, the slides are attached to the resources on this presentation, on the webinar. So firstly, anchor high. Say something like, for the current market and this role, I believe I should be paid, let's say 70K per year, add 10 or 20% onto that. So if you're asking for 70, push for 80 or even 90. Secondly, how to bring in fairness. Say something like, considering the market, what I think would be a fair salary is ... Or when you're negotiating, you can say, well, I think this is fair. Maybe if I reduce a little bit from 90 to 85 seems like a fair number based on the reality of the company and the market rate. Full stop. Really, again, be specific. Ask for a specific number, 77K instead of 75, for example. Final thing, perhaps the most important, state your point and be silent. You do not need to justify yourself. Don't try and justify yourself. Let them do the work in the negotiation. If you come in with a specific ask, anchored high, mention the word fair, get them to do the work to think it through. Right? So stay silent, don't get nervous. Come in and simply say, so I wanted to talk about increasing my salary today, looking at the current market, the role, and the skills that I've been improving over the last 3 months, for example. I believe a fair salary would be 84,000 euros. Full stop. Silence. Don't get nervous and go, yeah, because I looked at what other people are being paid in Berlin, blah, blah, blah. Don't do that. Stay silent. It's really, really effective. But pay me more because everyone else is getting paid more is not the strongest argument. And these tactics are just that, they're tactics. Sure, you can use them to leverage, use them as leverage in a high demand market, and we can get that extra 5-10%, and that's great. But as we said, it's not usually about the money. Instead, what you want in the situation of negotiation is a repeatable strategy that you can use to compel your boss, or create a really compelling argument for your boss or for a new company to not only pay you more, but to offer promotion, to give you more opportunity, more responsibility, more room for personal growth. And that's really what a salary negotiation is about. And for that, what we need to do is focus on the one thing that really matters, that one big domino that if we knock it down, it's going to make everything else irrelevant and have a massive disproportionate impact. But to knock that domino down, we need to do one key thing. We need a mindset shift. For me personally, that shift, that big realization came, I remember about 6-7 years ago when I was negotiating a consultancy job for the first time, a short-term sort of consultancy gig. It was going to be 5 to 10 days to come in and implement a design to development process. And I thought, well, I'd be pretty happy with £300 per day. My living costs were super low. I'm not that bothered by money, as long as I can pay the bills, obviously, and I'll learn a lot. So, whatever. I spoke to a friend who'd worked in product for a lot longer, and he was shocked. He said, like 300, like, what do you mean? Your value's way higher than that. So I decided, fuck it, let's just try 3 times higher. Because, I was confident, I knew my stuff on that specific subject. So why not let's just go at a 3 times higher rate. So I asked for 1,000 euros per day, and, sent it being like, oh, that's crazy. After one email, they came back saying, thousands a bit much, but we can do 900. So we agreed on 900. Could have pushed for 950 if I'd read Never Split the Difference at that time. Firstly, I was like, wow, that's, a lot of money for, I think it was about 8 days of work. But secondly, it made me realize it's not about the money or the time or what you think. It's about something else entirely. And with our students over the last 2-3 years, we quickly realized that we were seeing these big salary increases because of the same reason. And rather than getting 5 or 10% extra through these, through just tactics, we were seeing 20, 30, or even 50, 55 in that case, salary increases, and a lot of students getting promoted as well. Why? Because when they negotiated, it wasn't about the money or leverage or power, things that depended on the market, things that were outside of your control. It was because they demonstrated their value. They took control of that situation. They created more value in terms of them as a product manager, as a product leader, and they learned how to sell that value effectively. And today we're going to look at how we define and sell our value effectively. Because that's what drives negotiation, value. And it's great to see some of the answers there. We understand it's about value in most cases, but it's how do we actually package that effectively? And if you want to communicate your value clearly and effectively, you're going to have to answer 3 specific questions that the person you're negotiating with are going to be asking themselves. So firstly, how do I, as your boss, know your value? Secondly, how can I demonstrate your value to my boss or my HR team, for example, to unlock budget? And thirdly, what's the cost of you leaving? Now, that last one, anyone who's managed a team will know what that cost is, right? That's a known cost for the person you're negotiating with. Stress, more work for them. They need to find a new employee. They're going to be worried about team morale, about how it looks to other people when their team members are leaving. It's just a big old headache. So just getting them to think about that question in itself already helps. But the other two, surprisingly, very few product leaders know how to answer these first 2 questions. They don't objectively know your value. They don't know how to quantify it. And they have no idea how to demonstrate that value, how to sell you, you as an extra cost with that added salary to their boss, who's ultimately the one, in most cases, who's going to be approving the budget. So we need to help them understand and communicate your value in a clear, quantifiable way, as much as we need to understand and communicate our value to them in a clear, quantifiable way. And if we do that, we knock down what we call the big domino, right? It knocks everything else into place, makes everything else irrelevant. Yes, we can use tactics to add a bit more leverage, get a little bit of a nice little sprinkle of a pay rise, which is great to have. Nobody's going to say no to that. But nothing else really matters apart from communicating your value effectively. So how do you communicate your value? Well, we need to just demonstrate where we're at and where we are in relation to being a great product manager or senior product manager or whatever the role is beyond that in your company. And the best way to do that is that we communicate really clearly using something like Ravi Mehta's Peak Product Management Framework. Again, we've got links to that in the useful links document, where we want to break down a product manager's skill into 4 key competencies. So firstly, product strategy. Look at things like how have we influenced product vision? How did we tie our work to business outcomes? What was the strategic impact of our work in the broader context of the business? Secondly, customer insights. So how have we improved in terms of fluency with data? How did we effectively represent the voice of the customer? Do we understand and do we implement good user experience design based on a deep understanding of a specific customer persona, for example? On execution, did we deliver? In terms of did we measure quality assurance? Is the quality good of the products we're releasing? Third, how did we do in terms of feature specification and obviously delivery linked to that? And fourth, how we influence people. So how we led our team, how we managed upwards. Thirdly, stakeholder management broadly in terms of upwards and sideways as well. And finally, on that, are you developing your own leadership style? Are you coming across as a confident product leader, both in your work, but also obviously in the negotiation itself? But what you can do, and again, I'm going to send this through with the presentation and the links, is simply write down these 12 specific points that are segmented, as I said, by execution, customer insight, strategy, and influence. You can just write these down in an Excel sheet and rate yourself from 0 to 3. 3 being a true expert and 0 being no experience at all. And so where are you at in relation? What's your shape as an effective product manager? So you can use this as a foundation, or you could actually customize that framework based on your company's specific values. So Megan Murphy here, CPO at Hotjar, does some really great YouTube videos on product if you want to check that out. She's done just that. So she took the 12 competencies model from Ravi Mehta and adapted them to Hotjar's product principles. So what are important to Hotjar, their company? Things like impact, business objectives, influence, mentorship, people leadership, execution, prioritization, scope management, delivery and reliability, collaboration, communication. The third, expertise. Did you represent the voice of the customer? Data fluency. What's your business acumen? So what business results did you deliver? So we can customize that, or you can customize that as well, based on merging it with your principles, or even more specifically, what are the things that your boss and your product organization value as well? So either framework you can use to sort of benchmark where you're at. And we can also then map out these specific skills. And there's a really nice, again, screenshot here from Megan Murphy with building Hotjar's product competencies. So we can map out those specific skills that are expected of a product person for different roles, from associate PM to senior to VP of product, all the way through. And we can see how that shape changes over time here. I think really worth commenting on. In different roles, it's not just about getting better at everything, but actually focusing on some areas at the expense of others. Over time, we're going to be demonstrating more business outcomes rather than focusing on execution, the more senior we become. Again, this is linked through in the slides and the useful links on this webinar. So here we can get a feel for, where should we be at, rather than just where are we at currently. And we want to do 3 specific steps for that. So again, how specifically? Number 1, we need to benchmark. You need to benchmark yourself. What are your skills, your strengths, your weaknesses? How do these compare to the expectations of your current role? You can do this again with a simple Excel sheet. Write down those 12 competencies. Give yourself a score. Even easier, we built a custom skills assessment that will calculate your 12 competencies. Go to just test.prod.mba and you can take that competencies test and get a nice visual graph there as well. But again, Excel or paper is as good. Visualization helps. The key thing is sitting down and doing the exercise. So firstly, benchmark yourself. And you're going to get something like this from the assessment. Again, you can visualize this yourself or just use an Excel graph. Secondly, we want to visualize the improvement. Show where you were at maybe 12 months ago or when you last negotiated your salary and compare that to where you are now. Again, you can do the skills test to see where you're at now and in the presentation talk through how you've improved on specific areas, for example, business outcome. Again, don't worry about creating a clever visual like this. Just Excel sheet is fine. It's about just showing where were you at and where are you at now? Where are the improvements? And thirdly, the most important step, actually presenting your business case to your boss. Remember, it's not just about them understanding your value. It has to be easy for them to communicate that value to their own boss in many cases to unlock budget. An extra, 20 or 30,000 pounds or euros per year is not a small amount for any company. So make it easy for them to sell your value, particularly when budgets have been locked in, early on in the year, for example. So 4 simple steps. 5, actually. Step 1 is the obvious one. Book the call. get that meeting booked in, that career progress review, because if you don't do that, you're not going to do these other things. Some cases it makes sense to push it back. Christian, good example, 2 weeks in, not quite the time to negotiate your salary. Leave it for 2-3 months. Once we book the call, 4 key steps. So first thing, just write down 2 or 3 key business results that have been delivered. How did you impact things like retention, revenue, activation, etc.? Secondly, do, as we said, review where you're at in terms of your 12 competencies and how you feel you've improved on those. Third, show how these compare to the more senior roles. If we go back here, if you're currently a product manager pushing to become senior PM, how are you demonstrating the traits and capabilities of a senior PM? And again, you do the work there for them. You come into that conversation prepared and don't expect your product leader to do this for you. Maybe a collaborative thing, but take the lead, take control of this conversation. And finally, sprinkle those negotiation tactics on top. They are very effective. So it's really worth applying those to, again, get that little bit, 5-10% extra. And by benchmarking your value, and by then visualizing the improvement in specific areas and presenting that in a clear business case where we're tying the improvements we've made, and say, for example, we mentioned we've improved, we feel we've improved a lot in business outcomes, and then we mention a specific example of value that we delivered for the company, for the business. We, by benchmarking and then visualizing that improvement, we can negotiate a much bigger increase in a way that isn't uncomfortable, because we're not talking about us, we're talking about the objective data that we're going to be reviewing, objective competencies. So it's not uncomfortable. It doesn't feel like backstabbing. Again, we can have that conversation early rather than sort of waiting for the year after. And again, it's not just about the money, because we're showing as well, we're pushing for things like promotion, we're demonstrating leadership, we're demonstrating that the other person can trust us in many of these areas where we've improved upon and that we're obviously already competent in. And finally, why is this framework so important? Because it actually gives you the confidence to negotiate, right? It gives you some way of benchmarking yourself. So you don't go into that just sort of again saying, well, other people are being paid more, so I feel like I should. It's a weak argument. This is a strong, fact-based argument. It's going to give you confidence in that negotiation. I mean, you're not going to crumble. You're not going to nervously try and justify yourself in that conversation. Because it's a conversation about you, it's about your improvement, it's about your value, right? It's not just about the money when we frame it around competencies. So before we jump into the Q&A, just a final ask, the call to action from our side. If anybody wants to go beyond just salary negotiation, the tactics and frameworks we introduced today to actually fast track the product career, the path ahead of product, and specifically improve those 12 competencies dramatically in just 8 weeks. People looking to 10x their impact, build authority with stakeholders, gain a lot more autonomy and purpose, and hey, nice bonus as well, get a 30 to 50% salary increase over the next year. Then we're looking for a few more dream clients to work with. Again, we're not just going to help you get a salary increase, but things like promotion and a lot more impact in your work. And that's why for a limited time, we're going to be offering these career strategy sessions if you meet the criteria below. So we only want to work with people who are looking to accelerate their career, that want to build impactful products, people who want to build impactful teams as well. In terms of the process, you're going to be answering a few questions when you book a call with me. Second, on that personal call, we're going to break down some of the biggest challenges you're facing and work out how we might help you move forward towards your ideal role within 3, 6, even 12 months. And that's going to be a one-on-one call with me. It takes 30 to 45 minutes with a specific outcome of defining concrete next steps for fast tracking your product career, whatever those next steps may be. So again, who is this for? Product managers or product owners building new or existing products. Secondly, aspiring product leaders. 3, entrepreneurs. 4, people who want to have a real impact. And finally, people that want to actually put work in and put skin in the game. Who is this not for? Working with us is not free, it's not cheap, but we guarantee you will have a much bigger impact in your work. You're going to gain a lot more purpose with your work, and you will get a salary increase. But because of that, it's worth being really clear on who do we not want to work with in this case. People who like the idea of being a product leader, but aren't going to put the work in. People who don't take ownership of their situation. There's only so much support and advice we can give, and coaching. A lot of it has to be down to you as well. And finally, we don't want to work with people who are happy just gathering info, watching a load of YouTube videos and webinars, reading all these product books, and not actually putting things into action and getting results. We want to know straight away if somebody's going to be a good fit. So the better the fit, the better the results from our side. If we think you're going to put the work in, we know that we're going to get results for you. So we only want people that are willing to put the work in. So remember, this is a personal, custom, one-on-one career strategy session with you and me on a call where we're going to make really concrete steps towards fast-tracking your product career. We're only offering this for the next 7 days. We only work with 20 clients per quarter, and we've already got 17 of those places filled. So we've only got probably a few days to offer this option. So if you feel this is right for you, if you want to really accelerate your product career, then I'm going to be posting a link on the chat, and it's also at the top of the useful link for booking that one-on-one career strategy session, and just follow the instructions on that page to take the next steps with your product career. Good. Let's then, as I said, I'll post that link for you. And whilst I do that, we will jump into the Q&A for the next 10-15 minutes. Good. So if you'd like, feel free to start posting any questions you have on what we covered today. As I said, you've got the handouts available. So that is useful links, and secondly, the presentation slides as well. So you can go through that. I'm also going to be sending out the recording to anybody that was signed up to this webinar. So you'll get that recording. You can review a lot of what was covered. Good. Let's see what we've got then. Okay, I'll start with, let's see what we've got. Nick, I recently applied for a job at a well-known financial company who requests I disclose my current salary. I wasn't comfortable doing this as I work for another financial company. Oops, sorry, looks like the connection cut out for some reason. Okay, someone just posted me that I'm still live. You can still hear me. Good. Okay, I thought so. Just worth double checking. Sorry, let's look at this. We've got Nick. I recently applied for a job at a well-known financial company. They wanted you to disclose your current salary. Wasn't comfortable doing this, so I pushed back. They've mentioned without disclosing my current salary that they wouldn't be able to continue with my application. Any advice? I caved and added 30% on my current salary so that my application could be processed. It's a difficult one. I mean, there's advice that is given saying, you don't want to disclose your salary because obviously you're anchoring around, they will anchor around it. On the other hand, you don't want to lie because it sets a bad initial conversation. I think they shouldn't ask for it, essentially. It feels a bit, it sounds like they're basically trying to anchor based on what you're paid rather than what is the fair value. So I think, again, in that specific case, it's creating a business case and saying, look, here's my skill set, here are these competencies, show it in a measured way, because it's very difficult to argue with that because it's very concrete. And so look, this is the market rate for a senior PM based in, your case, London, senior product owner, Nick, in your case, based in London. And it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign, I think, if they're acting in that way. They're trying to get a good deal rather than recognizing your true value. So it's a bit of a warning sign for me. Advice, boost your salary, I think, as you've done, but again, be very wary of accepting that role as well. Good. Sorry, there's a load of comments I've seen, which is great to see. Awesome to see you all discussing things. If you could just repost your questions. Sorry, whoever posted first. I'm very sorry about ruining the order. Just makes it a little bit easier. So if you could post some questions. Good, Nick. So Nick said agree. Question from Ava. Do I need to have advocate colleagues to help me convince my supervisor? It's a good question. I mean, yes, obviously the final, if you say, hey, I've really improved on collaboration, and your supervisor is getting feedback that you're not a good manager, then there is it's not realistic, right? Whatever you're saying. So yes, it's going to be helpful getting advocacy from your colleagues. But I think, again, rather than the problem with a lot of these conversations, it's very sort of vague. Even if your colleagues say like, yeah, Eva's great, loved it, I feel she's doing a really good job, that's helpful. But how do you tie it directly back to your competency? So a good example I would give is, take one of the competencies, and let's say it's collaboration. Show one specific example of collaboration with specific colleagues that you feel you did a good job with. The manager might go and speak to them. You don't need to prompt them. You should be telling the truth, right, with this conversation. So you're going to get that support, right, that sort of testimonial in that kind of situation. Chris, when are you being promoted from associate to mid-level PM? Sorry, when you're being promoted, for example, from associate to mid-level PM, how do you make sure that you're not on the lower end of the salary span? What do you think, Chris? What do you think? What the advice I might give in this situation? Feel free to just post an answer. Intrigued. Don't worry to say don't know if you're completely lost. Chris, show that you bring a lot of value. Exactly. Why would they? Always, it's very easy to think from our perspective, think from their perspective, right? Why would they pay you, not on the lower end because you just started that role? Why wouldn't they do that? That makes sense on paper. So you need to demonstrate that your skill set is beyond that. It's very common for, let's take an example, Kieran, somebody we work with, Kieran had loads of advice before went straight into a senior product manager role, had loads of business experience, but not specifically product management advice. So it'd be very easy for them to go, well, let's put him on the lower end. And then it's up to Kieran to show like, no, I know my stuff. I just haven't been called a product manager before. So again, go back to those competencies, compare, if you're an associate, let's say you're looking at the product manager competencies. How are you better than those competencies? And again, draw upon those existing frameworks. Like Megan Murphy is very smart. She's thought this through. She's put them into practice. So use those frameworks. Adapt them afterwards, even better. But make sure you get started with something. And I recommend Megan's framework there. Let's take Chris, and you got another question, which is a good question, but I'd like to come to somebody else. So let's take Josh. How can I make a move when my company seems to be preoccupied with title and time on job and not impact? So you want to make a move because your company is basically is getting you to focus on things like execution and title rather than actually things that matter, such as business outcome. This is the $1 million question for many product managers. Many people working in roles, sounds like in your situation as well, where they're essentially working a feature factory, right? The value is really project management. They're there to execute. They're not there to think about strategy, business outcome, etc. Now, the unfortunate reality is we can hope that the company changes, or we can hope that they bring in some magical CPO that transforms the organization. It's not going to happen. Shifting culture, particularly in large organizations, is extremely difficult. So what you need to do, and this is the advice we always give, you need to build that experience outside of your day-to-day work. This is exactly why, Product MBA is based around getting you to build a real product from zero to revenue, because you then have a really strong product example to point to in interviews and actual results from that as well, right? A real product. Or you go and do that yourself, right? You don't need to pay us to do that as well. If you go and learn, go and apply it, and go and build something really concrete, then that provides the strong business case for getting getting into the interview elsewhere and succeeding in the interview itself. And that's where also our case study works really effectively, where we sort of package a whole product process around that real product you've built. So it's a bit of a secret weapon that we use. Again, happy to book a call with me. Happy to see what might make sense in your situation. Good question though, and one I'm sure that's relevant. Has nine. Question: should I get this score? Sorry, these scores, the 12 competencies from my supervisor as well. Yeah, look, a good starting point. I think particularly if you've just like joined a company, or you could have, if you have an honest conversation with yourself, and you say, I don't think I've improved that much over the last 12 months. Then first meeting, why not sit down and say, look, I want to go over these 12 competencies with you, supervisor person, and see where do we feel I am at. You can do that with them. You can also then do the skills test that we've done for you, just to benchmark where you're at. Again, yes, it's nice to get a little bit of extra money, but what's actually really important is your career development, that you are getting better. Because you could squeeze 10% extra out, but 5 years time, you might be in the same role, right? You get a little 5% every year, which is basically the same as less than inflation at the moment. So you're actually losing money if you're only going 5% extra every year. So yes, benchmark with your boss or your supervisor, and then move, take action to improve those scores. Kieran, I haven't seen you saw you back in November, right, for our meetup. How are we doing? Let's see what we got. Kieran, how about getting another job offer? So I'll do Q&A for another 10 minutes, by the way. How about getting another job offer at a higher salary to use as a way to get promotion and higher salary at your current role, because you actually want to stay? Yeah, it works very, very effectively. Should be something I mentioned in the negotiation. But if someone else externally, you're basically, someone has anchored your price, right? Someone has valued you elsewhere, and therefore your own company have a more, again, the person you're negotiating with themselves, they've got something to work with. But also, again, if they're trying to sell this or justify the increase in salary to their boss, to HR, whoever it might be, then it's easy for them to do so. They've got a concrete number they can work with. The 12 competencies are a good replacement for that, right? Again, we're trying to quantify and show this is our objective value, so it's the same outcome there. Good. What else have we got? Sam, let's pull this question up. How can I clearly demonstrate my worth as a PM whilst working for a scaling startup that requires me to fulfill multiple roles at once? This is a difficult one, because when you're in a scaling startup, you should take ownership. You should step in where needed. That's the nature of an early stage startup. That's the nature of what we call a sort of a triangle PM, right? You're working across business tech and user experience, right? You're sort of working across everything, and sometimes outside of your product domain. Now, that's fine to do. What you don't want to do is become a jack of all trades. So you want to take ownership, but also you want to be quite conscious and proactive in the specific direction you're setting. For example, if you're working in a scaling startup, you're going to be developing some really strong skills because it's such a fast-paced environment. But be more intentional. So I think a good exercise to do, Sam, would be sit down and map out those competencies of where you're at now. Identify specific areas you might want to improve upon. Again, you could do this with your supervisor, your boss. And then deliberately move towards those, right? Make sure you're prioritizing those kind of things. It's very easy in the day-to-day to get caught up on execution, as you're managing Scrum Master responsibilities and delivery, but you want to be developing those skills of the senior PM and even all the way towards VP. So particularly again in a scaling startup, your promotion, your ladder will move very quickly. So I would suggest benchmark where you're at, be intentional about moving towards those things. And again, why not try and negotiate already? Worst case scenario, your boss will say, look, Sam, yeah, some of these things I think are fair, but actually you're not, you need to be a little bit stronger on business outcome or strategy, for example. So again, be intentional. 1, set that meeting. 2, review where you think you're at. 3, set specific steps for what you're going to improve upon. Bonus, if you get the salary increase, then awesome. If not, keep learning, keep improving. Good. Let's see what we got. Pranav, what will be your answer to this question? I don't know yet. I haven't read the question. Your expected C2C is higher than our budget. The maximum we can offer is X. Would you be okay with that? So they're asking for you to be reasonable. They're bringing in fairness here as a negotiation tactic. Be pushback. Demonstrate your value. Say, look, no, this is the market rate. This is a fair rate. You could drop it a little bit. And, as I gave in the example, you could say you're negotiating 80K. You say, look, I think it's maybe fair based on, the limitations of budget that we agree on, let's say 76,000, for example. But don't just accept what their budget. The budget is always flexible. There's always an extra 10% just in terms of the role itself. And there's always extra budget set per year as well. So again, it's about value. Relevant for everybody here. You actually have to be valuable to negotiate a lot higher salary. Right? It's not just about, again, hey, inflation's there. There's lots of demand. How do you best negotiate? It's about creating the value, right? Getting a lot better and more valuable for your company, and then selling that to them. So, if you're not able to shift them on that, then do a bit of introspection, Pranav, and say, okay, actually, am I that good? Am I at that level yet? Or do I need to improve on a few things? And then go back again, look at those competencies, see what you want to improve upon, and go from there. But yeah, try and push back again, use those negotiation tactics that we went through in the second section. Awesome. A few more questions coming through as well. Nice to see, Daniel. Great. Yeah. If you've got different ideas, different tactics, then share that advice on the chat as well. I think that's really, really helpful. There's no one way to approach these kind of questions. Let's have a look at Swaraj. So what have we got, Swaraj? When I joined my current role, I was fresh out of an MBA and in a team of experienced PMs. Now many have left and I have more pivotal responsibilities and a lot relies on me. How to use this to negotiate in the best way? Yeah, it's the classic case of sort of, if you're doing 2 jobs, then obviously you should be paid more because you're doing a lot of extra work. In this specific case, I haven't been in that situation, so I want to be careful with the advice I give. It's going to be about demonstrating what you did before people left, right? What were your responsibilities and competencies? And secondly, how have those competencies and responsibilities in this case increased? Yeah, but ultimately tying it back to business outcomes. It's great you're doing more work, but if you're not delivering more value, then they're not going to care. That's not going to shift their opinion, unfortunately, even if it's unfair, which it sounds like it is unfair. So again, tie it back to value. Yes, it's important to show, look, I'm doing all these extra things, but it's more important to show, here's all the extra value that I'm bringing. Good. What else have we got? Yuri, just actually important question. Should we leave our emails here to collect presentations or would it be sent automatically? Download the materials. I think you can access them at the bottom or on the right-hand side where you look at handouts. Let me add them right here for you to the handout section, so you've got access to all of those. I'll also be emailing them out to everybody that joined. Excellent. We've got a few more questions just in the last couple of minutes. So where are we? Eva, confidence, how to help myself believe that I've created a big enough business outcome to ask for a raise. That is a difficult question to ask. To answer. Confidence is very important, and a really good piece of advice that Antonio, who's our community manager and also one of our alumni, gave, that actually I apply now as well, is think, what would a confident person do? Very difficult to improve your confidence. It's important, very important. You can do that by, again, improving your skill set, trying new things at work, right? Just becoming more experienced, and that's going to give you confidence. But a very simple hack: just think, what would a confident person do? A confident person would go and ask for that raise. Worst case scenario, again, your boss is going to say, no, sorry, we can't do that. You can come back and say, okay, well, what would I need to do to get that? Bring the competencies, review those, and review, again, specific areas. Worst case scenario, you're going to know what you need to do to get the raise. And secondly, you're going to know exactly what to improve, which again is more important, right? Improving your skill set and experience itself. Ronald, how to avoid jeopardizing your current job in the negotiations, i.e. how to avoid indicating that you might leave the job. It's a difficult one. Again, the competencies framework, I think, is so effective because you're taking a conversation away from sort of you and your selfish ask, and it's much more about like what's fair. So look, here are the facts of the matter on these 12 competencies. Even if you've self-rated, it still looks objective, right? Because it's tangible. So it's the same thing as saying, like, here's the fair rate. You don't have to justify that, and they might not even ask. They're just going to assume it's legitimate. So again, refer to the competency and say, look, this is the market rate, and you don't need to be aggressive about it, but don't justify. My best advice would be show your competencies, discuss them with the person that you're negotiating with, and just do it in an objective, calm way. Don't say anything on that conversation if if it doesn't come to a conclusion, but go away and you need to make the decision yourself. Ultimately, are you being valued enough? Again, we're in an employees market, so there are jobs everywhere. So if you feel you're not being rewarded fairly, go away, take your time, start applying, start interviewing, and then if you want to leave the job, leave the job. If you want to stay, you can come back and say, look, as Kieran did, hey, I'm being offered a higher salary elsewhere. What can you do to help? Good. Have we got any more questions before we wrap up? It looks like that is it. I might go. I think there's one or two more which I saw earlier. Chris, okay, good question. Funny question. How do you put a salary increase benchmark on the skills improvement? Yeah, I don't think there's any one way to do it. I think what you want to do essentially is, obviously, you can't break down like what each competency is worth. Throw in an extra £1,000 on customer insight. So instead, benchmark it on the roles, right? So it's like, look, here's where I'm at in relation to, say, I'm a product manager. Here's where a senior product manager is. Here's what a senior product manager is paid. I feel I'm there, or I'm very nearly there. Therefore, I should be just below whatever that rate is. So it's sort of benchmarking to the roles, and we can go on glassdoor.com to see what what is the going salary in a specific location and for a specific role. Excellent. Well, look, we're going to wrap up there. So you've got the handouts on the right hand side. I'm going to send through the good. Yeah, a lot of people have downloaded it already. I'm also going to email it. I'm going to email the replay to you all as well, so you've got access to everything there. I hope that was helpful. Feedback's always appreciated. So, message me on LinkedIn. Let me know how it goes. If you're going to go and forward with that negotiation, message me if you need some support. Yes, I'm going to email the deck through to everybody as well. Thanks, Chris. Glad you enjoyed it. Everything's going to come through in an email. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. And what's the most important thing? Go and actually put it into practice. If not, you wasted your time, you wasted my time as well, which I'd be deeply offended about. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the talk. Have a great weekend. And as I said, I'll send everything through in an email to you. Cheers, everyone. Cheers, Chris, Mira as well. Pasquale, Kieran, thank you. Josh, thank you for joining as well. Thanks, Milap, Yuri, Jeevan, Oliver, Tui, Alvaro, Yuri, Sam, Pranav, Julian, thank you. And hopefully see you soon as well.